The Galactic Council had seen many things in its 12 million years of recorded history. They had watched stars die and be reborn. They had catalogued over 7,000 sentient species, from the floating gas bag poets of Jupiter's upper atmosphere to the crystalline calculators of the Andromeda dwarf galaxy. They believed they had seen everything the universe could throw at them. They were wrong. The trouble began with a simple distress call. A survey vessel from the Veth species, a peaceful race of arthropod-like beings known for their art and philosophy, had entered a sector marked as unexplored on all star charts. The sector was near the Orion Arm, a region most civilized species avoided because of its chaotic gravitational fluctuations and high radiation levels. But the Veth were curious by nature, and their ship, the Dream of Still Water, was equipped with the best shields in the Council. When the Dream of Still Water failed to check in for 3 standard cycles, the Council sent a rescue team. The rescue team found the ship intact, but its crew gone. The only anomaly was a single, low-power transmission repeating on an old military frequency. The transmission was not in any known language. It was a series of clicks, pauses, and harmonic frequencies that the ship's computer initially dismissed as stellar noise. But one junior analyst, a young Effler named Tesk, had a hobby. He studied dead signals, transmissions that were too primitive to be of any use. He spent his nights cataloging them like ancient coins. Tesk ran the signal through a pattern recognition algorithm he had built himself. The algorithm did something no one expected. It identified the signal not as noise, but as a targeting protocol. A specific, brutal, and terrifyingly efficient targeting protocol. The signal was a challenge, a demand to identify friend or foe. And it was still active. Within days, 3 more Council ships vanished near the same sector. Each time, the same pattern emerged. Ships with advanced shields, energy weapons, and cloaking technology simply stopped transmitting. Their last logs showed no evidence of attack, no explosions, no hull breaches. Just a sudden, silent loss of power followed by dead space. The Council's military wing, which had not seen real combat in over 1 million years, was baffled. They called it the Silent Zone. They sent their best warship, the Indomitable, a vessel that had single-handedly ended the Krovik Rebellion 3 centuries ago. The Indomitable was crewed by the finest soldiers from a dozen species. It carried a weapon that could crack a small moon. The Indomitable entered the Silent Zone on a Tuesday, by Earth's calendar, though Earth did not yet know it existed. For 12 hours, everything was normal. Then the ship sent a single, garbled message: "They are not attacking. They are uninviting. It's a hunt." The message ended. The Council was in chaos. Ambassadors screamed at each other. The Veth representative wept openly. The ruling council of 7 elders, ancient beings who had not left their meditation chambers in 50,000 years, were forced to convene. They decided on a desperate measure. They would send a diplomatic envoy, not a military one. They would attempt first contact with whatever lurked in the Silent Zone. They would offer trade, knowledge, and alliance. They would do what they had always done: talk. The envoy consisted of 3 ships, a Xylos diplomatic vessel. The Xylos had never lost a negotiation. A Quenter research vessel. The Quenter had mapped the minds of over 200 species. And a small, unarmed escort from the peaceful Gerlich, whose species had evolved to emit calming pheromones that could pacify a rampaging beast. This was the best they had. They jumped into the Silent Zone with hopes high and weapons locked away. What they found was not a monster. What they found was a graveyard. The Silent Zone was not empty. It was full of debris. But not the debris of battle. It was the debris of failed escape. Thousands of ships, from hundreds of species, all torn apart not by energy beams or missiles, but by something far more intimate. The wreckage showed signs of forced boarding, of internal explosions, of systems deliberately overloaded from the inside. The Quenter researchers scanned the wreckage and made a horrifying discovery. Every ship had been disabled by someone who knew exactly where its weakest point was. Not a structural weakness, a behavioral weakness. Whoever did this had studied the psychology of every known species and designed attacks that exploited their very instincts. The Xylos diplomat, a being named Elder Whisper, tried to send a greeting on all frequencies. The only response was a single word, repeated in perfect Xylos: approach. They approached. A planet came into view. It was small, cold, and covered in thick cloud cover. Not special in any way. But as they drew closer, the sensors began to scream. The planet was not a planet. It was a fortress. Every mountain was a gun. Every valley was a landing bay. The oceans were not water. They were a liquid metal alloy that could self-repair. The atmosphere was not gas. It was a distributed sensor network that could detect a heartbeat from orbit. And beneath the surface, in a massive underground complex, were the life signs. Billions of them. All warm-blooded. All breathing oxygen. All with the same basic body plan. Bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes. The Gerlich, whose calming pheromones had never failed, began to tremble. Their ship's captain, a stout female named Grun, reported that her crew was experiencing primal terror, not fear of the unknown. Terror of something their genes remembered. Something ancient. The Quenter researchers ran a deeper scan and found the truth. The inhabitants of this fortress planet were not native to this star system. They had arrived here less than 5,000 years ago, fleeing something. Their original homeworld was a death world, high gravity, extreme tectonic activity, a star that flared with radiation every 11 years. A world where only the most aggressive, most adaptable, most relentless predators could survive. They called themselves humans. Their planet was called Earth, but Earth was gone. The scan showed a broken planet, cracked open like an egg, on the other side of the galaxy. These humans had not left because they wanted to. They had left because something had destroyed their world. And instead of dying, they had done the one thing no other species in Council history had ever done. They had turned their grief into a weapon. They had built a new home out of the pieces of their old one. And they had spent every waking moment since preparing for war. Not because they wanted to fight. Because they knew that whatever had destroyed Earth would come for them again. And they intended to win. The Council envoy received a second transmission. This time, it was a video feed. The face that appeared on their screens was human. Male, middle-aged, with a short beard and tired eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with no rank insignia. He spoke in a calm, flat voice that translated perfectly into every language on the Council's database. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and your purpose. You have 10 seconds. The Xylos diplomat, Elder Whisper, who had negotiated peace between the Veth and the Krovik, stepped forward and delivered the most eloquent speech of his long life. He spoke of unity, of shared wonder at the stars, of the great family of sentient beings that stretched across the galaxy. He offered friendship, trade, and a place in the Galactic Council. He spoke for 5 minutes. When he finished, the humans stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a soldier who had just heard a child explain why sharp knives are not dangerous. Do you know what we are? The human asked. Elder Whisper did not answer. The human answered for him. We are the species that killed every other predator on our homeworld. We are the species that turned our own planet into a weapon. We are the species that looked at the thing that destroyed our world, the thing that made your council run and hide, and we did not run. We followed it. We killed it. And we are still hungry. The council envoy went silent. The Quenter researchers rechecked their data. They had assumed the silent zone was a defensive perimeter. It was not. It was a hunting ground. The missing ships were not destroyed. They were taken. The humans were not hiding. They were learning. Every ship that entered their space was not an invader. It was a test. The humans let them come close, studied their tactics, their technology, their psychology, and then struck with surgical precision. They did not want to destroy the council. They wanted to understand it. Because understanding was the first step to conquest, Elder Whisper tried to retreat. But the Gerlich ship suddenly reported that its engines were locked. The humans had sent a boarding party without anyone noticing. The boarding party was small, for humans in matte black armor that absorbed all light. They moved with a fluid, terrifying grace. They did not use weapons. They simply walked through the Gerlich ship, and wherever they walked, the Gerlich crew fell unconscious. Not dead, unconscious, the humans were collecting specimens, alive. On the Xylos diplomatic vessel, Elder Whisper saw everything. He watched the humans on the Gerlich ship with a feeling he had not experienced in 50,000 years, pure, undiluted dread. He tried to send a warning to the council. But the human on the video feed was already speaking again. Your council has 12 million years of history. You have seen empires rise and fall. You think you are old. You think you are wise. But you have never faced what we have faced. You have never lost everything. You have never had to rebuild from nothing with only your hands and your teeth. We have, and we learned something in that darkness. We learned that peace is a lie told by the strong to keep the weak quiet. The only truth is war. And we are very, very good at war." The human paused. His tired eyes softened for just a moment. "We don't want to fight you. We don't want to conquer you. We want you to leave. Tell your council that this sector belongs to humanity now. Tell them to stay away. If they do not..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The council envoy was allowed to leave. The Gerlich crew was returned, unharmed but deeply traumatized. The 4 human soldiers vanished as quietly as they had arrived. The 3 ships jumped back to council space with their tails between their legs. Elder Whisper gave his report in person. The council chambers were silent for an entire day. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply sat in the dark and tried to understand what they had encountered. The Quinter researchers worked day and night to analyze the data. They built a profile of humanity. It was the most terrifying document ever written in the Council's history. According to their analysis, humans had not evolved intelligence despite being predators. They had evolved intelligence because they were predators. Every aspect of their biology was optimized for killing. Their forward-facing eyes gave them depth perception for tracking prey. Their sweat glands allowed them to outrun almost any animal on their planet by exhausting it. Their ability to throw objects with precision was unmatched in the animal kingdom. Their bone density, their muscle fibers, their very metabolism were all designed for one thing: violence, but the biology was only half the story. The psychology was worse. Humans experienced a chemical release in their brains during combat that made them feel pleasure. They called it adrenaline. They actively sought out dangerous situations because it felt good. They had rituals, games, and entire entertainment industries built around simulated violence. They watched other humans fight for sport. They told their children stories about heroes who killed monsters. They had a word for the feeling of joy in battle. They called it the thrill. And yet, the Quinter also found something else. Something contradictory. Humans were also capable of deep empathy. They mourned their dead with elaborate ceremonies. They cared for their sick and elderly. They built hospitals and schools. They wrote poetry about love and loss. They were, in many ways, a gentle species. But the Quinter reached a chilling conclusion. The gentleness was not the default. It was a choice. A conscious, daily, exhausting choice to not be what their biology demanded. And when that choice was taken away, when they were threatened or afraid, the predator awoke. And the predator was ancient, patient, and absolutely without mercy. The council debated for weeks. Some wanted to send the full military. Others wanted to offer unconditional surrender. A few, very few, wanted to try friendship again. In the end, they did nothing. They waited. They hoped the humans would stay in their sector and leave the rest of the galaxy alone. It was the worst decision they ever made. 6 months later, a human ship appeared at the edge of council space. It was not a warship. It was a small, unarmed vessel with a single occupant, the same bearded human from the video feed. He requested an audience with the council. After much debate, they agreed. He was brought to the council chambers, unarmed and alone. The 7 elders stared down at him from their floating thrones. He looked tiny, insignificant, a soft pink creature in a gray uniform. He introduced himself as General Marcus Thorne, commander of Sol Defense Force. He said he came in peace. He said he wanted to propose an alliance. The council was suspicious but intrigued. General Thorne explained that the thing that had destroyed Earth was not a natural disaster. It was a species so old, so powerful, that it had consumed hundreds of worlds. The council knew of it. They called it the Scourge. They had lost 3 entire sectors to it 1,000,000 years ago. They had retreated and built a wall of automated defenses around the Scourge's territory. They had not thought about it since. The Scourge was coming back. General Thorne had the proof. Sensor data, intercepted communications, even a captured Scourge drone. The Scourge had been rebuilding for 1,000,000 years. It was now stronger than ever. And it had noticed the humans. It had noticed their fortress planet, their weapons, their aggression. It saw them as a threat. It was mobilizing to destroy them. But the Scourge would not stop with the humans. It would eat through the council's worlds like a fire through dry grass. The humans could not stop it alone. They needed help. They needed the Council's fleets, their technology, their knowledge. The Council was torn. Many members still feared the humans more than the Scourge. But General Thorn made them an offer they could not refuse. He offered them the humans' greatest secret, the thing that had allowed them to survive on a death world, to escape a destroyed planet, to build a fortress in the void. He offered them their doctrine. He called it asymmetric warfare, the art of fighting a stronger enemy not by matching their strength, but by attacking their weaknesses. The humans had perfected it over 10,000 years of constant war. They had turned weakness into a weapon. They would teach the Council. They would fight alongside them. All they asked in return was a single sector of space to call their own. And the right to be left alone. The Council accepted. It was the only logical choice. They did not see the trap until it was too late. For the next 2 years, the humans trained the Council's military. They taught them how to fight dirty, how to ambush, how to retreat and regroup, how to use the enemy's size against them, how to turn supply lines into death traps, how to make every loss hurt. The Council's soldiers, who had not seen real combat in millions of years, learned quickly. They became brutal. They became efficient. They became, in a small way, like the humans. And they began to win. The Scourge, for the first time in a million years, was pushed back. Sector after sector was reclaimed. The Council celebrated. They hailed General Thorn as a hero. They built statues of him. They named ships after him. But the Quenter researchers, the ones who had built the original human profile, were not celebrating. They were watching. They noticed something strange. Every battle the humans fought alongside the Council, the humans lost more ships than the Council. They took the most dangerous assignments. They volunteered for suicide missions. They were dying in droves. And yet, their morale never broke. Their production never slowed. Their soldiers never retreated. It was as if they did not mind dying. Or worse, as if they expected it. The Quenter dug deeper. They analyzed the casualty reports, the supply logs, the communications intercepts. What they found made them sick. The humans were not losing. They were culling. Every battle, the humans deliberately put their own people in harm's way. They sent their least experienced soldiers first. They sacrificed entire battalions to save a single Council ship. They were not fighting the Scourge. They were fighting a different war. A war against themselves. The Quenter presented their findings to the Council in secret. The humans, they said, were practicing a form of population control. Their species had a biological drive to reproduce that was out of control. On Earth, before the destruction, they had managed it with nuclear weapons, which they had used on each other twice. Yes, twice. In their own history. On their own planet. Against their own cities. The Quenter had found the records. The humans had nearly wiped themselves out 6 times in the last 10,000 years. Each time, they had bounced back stronger, angrier, more unified. They had learned that war was not a disease. It was a medicine. A terrible, bloody medicine that kept their numbers in check and their civilization from collapsing under its own weight. The Scourge was not a threat to the humans. It was an opportunity. A chance to bleed off their excess population, to train their soldiers, to test their weapons, all while looking like heroes. And when the Scourge was finally destroyed, the humans would be the only ones left with a battle-hardened military. The Council's fleets, rebuilt with human technology and human tactics, would be useless. They would be dependent on the humans for protection. They would be, in every practical sense, conquered. Elder Whisper, the diplomat who had first spoken to General Thorn, confronted him in private. He showed him the Quenter's report. General Thorn read it slowly, his tired eyes scanning each page. When he finished, he looked up at the ancient being and smiled. It was a sad smile. The smile of a father who has just explained death to a child. You are not wrong, General Thorn said. But you are not right, either. We did not plan this. We did not want this. We wanted to be left alone. But you came to our home. You brought your ships, your diplomats, your researchers. Re-afraid. That fear Washington.